Whether the team has been giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, with the news that we received yesterday that Jayden Daniels done for the season, not going to be placed on IR, will be allowed to continue to travel with the team. They have one more away game. Will be allowed to practice throughout the duration of the regular season, 3 more weeks. All positives for him. He will not play in another NFL game this season, which is a relief for fans like myself who realize the greater good here, right? The bigger picture, if you will. With that said, now that Jayden Daniels is out for the remainder of this season, I think we can now kind of reflect on the season that was for him. And I've heard from so many different fans. Most of them think, much like myself, that Jayden Daniels is going to be fine. Still believe he's one of them ones, all of that good stuff. But there are some fans, and again, I can't be upset at anyone that has this thought process. But there are some fans out there that need to see it from Jayden again. Don't believe that Jayden is that guy, and have questions about him. And again, all of that totally within reason, right? That said, I do want to talk about the year that was 2025 for Jayden Daniels, what we saw, how I feel, leaving this season, biggest takeaways, etc. And then we can kind of move forward into the rest of this season, and then we have an entire offseason ahead of us. But before we get to any of that, Jayden actually addressed the media today. He had about a 6-minute media scrum today where he talked about, his season being, brought to a close, how frustrating a year it was, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of me relaying this to you, because I know some of you haven't heard, most of you probably have seen the 6-minute media scrum, but most of you haven't. And so I took the liberty of going ahead and grabbing those 6 minutes of audio for you to listen, because I know it's not going to be the easiest to track down on the interweb. So this was Jayden Daniels today at his media scrum as he addressed the media, probably for the final time this regular season. I would imagine we'll see him again for the exit interviews, right? Once all the players are going to split for the final time. And you talk to most of the prominent players, I think they'll talk to Jayden once more then. But this was the last time they're gonna talk to him during the regular season. Here was Jayden Daniels today during his media scrum session.
How are we doing?
Good. So, obviously shutting you down. Like, what was your reaction to that? And just what's feeling like for you?
It was obviously disappointing. I'm a competitor. I want to play, but I wasn't medically cleared to go, and sat down, talked to DQ and AP, and made the decision.
How do you feel physically?
I'm getting better. I mean, like I said, I didn't meet the markers to be cleared for contact for this game. So now it's just focused on getting healthy and preparing for next year.
What's this season been like for you, just in general?
Frustrating, disappointing, a lot more emotions, but very much probably a lot of adversity that I've dealt with, on the field for the most part, and just trying to learn and keep moving forward.
What have you learned about yourself during this time because of all that?
Man, I haven't really sat to reflect, but I said the main one is it's not easy to rehab and get back out there, especially after something so traumatic like that. So just the perseverance and really just the passion and the want to, to be the best version of myself for my teammates.
Would you have done anything different? Go ahead, Ben. Sorry,
you asked.
Just saying that, the rehab, how difficult it is. If you could have changed anything through the process, would you?
I mean, yeah, I would be healthy. That would be the main one. But nah, man, I just got to go with the battles. And obviously, it's the story that God had written out for me. So we'll move forward and learn from it.
Dan said that you could have, in theory, gone back into that game. But then a couple days later, it felt a little bit different. What felt different for you? What did the re-aggravation mean as far as how you felt?
I mean, adrenaline is a hell of a drug, so that's a big one. But things change, once stuff settled down.
It's probably unfamiliar territory for you, practicing with, you're not going to play, but how engaged are you in the game plan and getting Marcus ready to go?
I mean, that's my focus, man. Being the best teammate for Marcus, being the best teammate in the locker room, anything Marcus needs, to be there for him, and just how supportive and how much he's meant to me in my career. It's time to, exchange roles and do that for him.
What do you think you can learn over these next 3 weeks?
Man, I mean, just continue to get better and see the game from a different lens, ask questions, as many questions as I can. Kind of have that time to really sit there and maybe ask DQ about situational football or go talk to the DB coach, Simo, and all those guys to see what they're thinking and how they would call this and, what are the rules and principles. So that's a lot I can learn.
Have you been surprised by the number of injuries you've had in games you've had to miss this season? That's not something you're used to.
Yeah, I have been surprised. I mean, nobody wants to be injured. You work so hard and put in so much work daily and in the off season to get to this point. So it's very hard for people and frustrating for people to do injuries.
Have you already started to think in terms of the off season, like things to do to help you avoid the injuries the next time? Anything like different types of training or anything that you're kind of
I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, I can't really avoid the injuries that I've dealt with. Those are just freak accidents. So, just you kind of reevaluate after each season.
Hey, Jayden, this has been tough going through this, but who has been the most instrumental in helping you navigate through this?
Man, my family in general. My mom and my dad, they kind of try to pry things out of me and everything. So they make sure that, mentally, that's probably the most important thing for me, especially dealing with something that I haven't dealt with before. So it's new territory for all of us. And, they've just been by my side and really just helped me navigate through things.
What are you doing in practice and over the next couple of weeks? What's your plan in practice to just work on? What is it you want to work on? What will you be doing?
I'll be out there practicing whatever they need me to do. If I got to do scout team, I'll have fun with that and give the best looks. And really just be out here, like I said, be supportive to all my teammates and still be engaged and bring the juice and the energy.
That they were freak injuries in your mind, does that add to the frustration in a way?
Yeah, I mean, other than that one game I missed for a hamstring, my knee and then obviously my elbow, those aren't something that you could really necessarily prepare for. Those are things that, like I said, freak accidents and things like that. So it's most definitely frustrating and at that time very, I would say, traumatic and stuff like that because you never know what you do and you see different things. So I just kind of just move forward and get ready for next year.
And you play in an era where everybody has an opinion and voices it regularly. Is that difficult to deal with, or are you just getting used to it? How do you manage that?
Man, we in a time, like I said, everybody has an opinion, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Doesn't necessarily mean that applies to my life or I have to follow it. For me, it's just all that matters is my inner circle in this building, and people are gonna have their opinions, whether you're doing good, whether you're doing bad. You're on the field, you're off the field, so kind of just move on and kind of brush it to the side.
When did you know after Minnesota, after the adrenaline wore off, that this is still a problem?
I woke up the next day. That's kind of when you really everything settles down. And I just woke up the next day. I did some tests, felt it in different things, and just kind of just being honest and going forward because longevity is a big thing. So you want to be smart with these type of things.
How tough was that moment?
Super tough, man. I don't want to miss games at all. I've been frustrated this whole season missing games. I want to be out there to help my teammates as much as possible. So, it's just been a frustrating year, disappointing year, but you learn from it and we move forward.
Thoughts on Lane Kiffin, and have they already hit you up?
Man, they have not hit me up, but I'll be rooting for LSU. So go Tigers.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jayden.
So that was Jayden Daniels' press conference. It'll probably be the last time we hear from him during the regular season, as I mentioned. I think you may hear from him once more with the exit strategy. The exit interviews. You may not. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, something that was interesting that we heard in this little media scrum was the fact that he talked about that mental side of things again. Remember, he talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago. We had brought it up, talked about him, being vulnerable just a tad bit, letting us into his mindset as to some of the struggles of this season. And while a lot of times you think about the physical struggles of the season, the mental struggles may be even more pressing, more impactful. I thought we saw a guy that at times looked mentally compromised on the field as much as physically compromised, and which is another reason I didn't want him out there, because you could see the toll that this season was taking on him, from the physical reps in practice to the actual practice, the reps on the field, the lack thereof. I saw a guy that, at times towards the end of the season, I don't think the confidence was there. He wasn't trusting what he was seeing, et cetera, et cetera. So he talked about, the mental toughness that he's had to show this year, and the things he's had to endure, and, his parents being there for him and trying to get him to vocalize how he feels and things of that nature. And I think that's one of the things we don't talk about as fans very often, is that mental side of things. It's tough when you've never gone through this. One of the things I find very, hilarious with this whole Jayden Daniels situation, I expect this from other fan bases. I don't necessarily expect that from our fan base, but I've talked about this so many times in the past. Our fan base is so beat up. We've been through so much, and this year did not help at all. If anything, it sent us back to where we were before. Not we, some of you, back to where you were. And so our fan base can be toxic at times, because when you are brought up in toxicity, that's all you know. There's a sector of our fan base that all they know is toxic behavior from this organization. So when that's all you know, that's what you spew, right? That's what you see from our fans. There's a ton of negativity towards Jayden Daniels right now. Way more than I thought we would see. Same thing with Dan Quinn. A lot more negativity towards Dan Quinn. And again, you may not think he's the answer, and that's fine. But that man took you to places that most of you have never seen before. And at the drop of a hat, you're ready to jump ship. Same thing with the quarterback that took you to places that you've never seen before. There's a lot of fans that don't believe in Jayden. And again, if you're one of the fans that still believes in him, but you're like, hey, I need to see it again. I get that. You're like, hey, I still think this kid's dynamic, but I didn't see it this year. I need to see it again. Okay. I disagree that you didn't see it this year, but I get that you would like to see him stay healthy, one, and two, be the consistent force that he was in his rookie season. I'm not upset at that. I understand that, as a matter of fact. However, there are some that they want to make him out to be the next Robert Griffin III and all this nonsense. And I struggle with this because, one, he played like Robert Griffin III never played a full season when he was here in Washington, not a single one. whether it was because of poor play or injuries. He never played in a full season as a Washington Redskin. There are a lot of quarterbacks. You look around the NFL, and fans tend to be prisoners of the moment. I hate it, but that's just how it is. I expect, fans of other teams, they were looking for this. They were circling like vultures, hoping, praying for our demise and Jayden Daniels' downfall. They were looking for it. But if you look around the league, most quarterbacks get injured. There's a very small, minute portion of quarterbacks that don't sustain injuries and miss time, but we don't label them as injury prone. Football is the most volatile sport there is. I hate that for Jayden, he suffered 3 different injuries this year, and now he's got a label that it's going to take time for him to shed. But I'd much rather him suffer those 3 injuries that he did this year that didn't knock him out for the duration of the year than the one big injury that we've seen other quarterbacks and other players around the league suffer. Joe Burrow is a great example. We've seen him miss full season, half of seasons, with injuries, whether it was his wrist or it was his, ACL. Like, we've seen him knocked out of full seasons. Jayden didn't endure that, right? He just dealt with several different injuries. But this is the thing that people struggle with, this concept. Jayden Daniels has played in a full NFL season already. He did not miss a single game in his rookie campaign. So right now, he's batting 50%. That's probably the going rate for the NFL with quarterbacks. Like, a lot of quarterbacks miss time. You look at our own division. Go look up and see how many seasons Jalen Hurts has played every single game. You'll be surprised at how many times he's done that in his NFL career. Just in the last 5 years, how many times has Dak Prescott played every single game for the Dallas Cowboys? It's hard to stay healthy in this league, play every single game, be an Iron Man. That's not how this usually works. Lamar Jackson has missed seasons. He started to get the injury-prone label. Then he was able to stay healthy a couple of years, and now here we are back to Lamar having a situation this year where he wasn't able to stay healthy. It happens. But here's what I want to focus on. Enough of that conversation. Here's what I want to focus on right now. Jayden Daniels' 2025 season. It was rough. He talked about it. You heard his press conference, media scrum from today. It was rough. 7 games is what he started this season. But only 4 of them he actually finished. So we can rattle off the 7 starts. Weeks 1 and 2 versus the Giants and Packers respectively. Then was injured with the knee injury. Came back with a brace for weeks 5, 6, and 7 versus the Chargers, Bears, and Cowboys. Then he injured his hamstring, missed 1 game, which was the Chiefs game. Came back the following week in week 9 for the Seattle game, hurt his elbow, and then he missed weeks 10 through 14, came back for week 10 through 13, missed week 14, and came back week 14 for the Vikings game, re-aggravated the elbow, and he's done for the season. Of those 7 games that he started, he only finished 4 of them. Weeks 1 and 2 versus the Giants and Green Bay. Weeks 5 and 6 versus the Chargers and Bears. So JP Finley put out a tweet today that I thought kind of encapsulated my thoughts on Jayden Daniels, moving forward. He basically wrote the following: Jayden Daniels, 4 complete games this season. So we just talked about that. 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 fumble lost. The interception and fumble loss came in the same game. They came in the same game against the Chicago Bears. He had a really good opening drive and then ended that opening drive with a bad interception. And really, he was just late with the football. If he cuts it loose sooner, it's probably a touchdown. It wasn't a bad read. It was a bad throw because it was late. Then he had the fumble. Not going to make any excuses for him. He just needed to focus. It was wet. Doesn't matter. Catch the football, hand it off. It's 3rd and 1. We convert that. We win the game. Instead of being 3-3 with a devastating loss that we would never recover from, we're 4-2. We've got our first 2-game win streak of the season, and we're heading into Dallas with crazy momentum, right? Changed everything. 2-2 overall record in those 4 games. Easily could have and should have been 3-1. Again, the Bears game, it's unfortunate that he got a loss for that game because he outplayed Caleb Williams significantly and was the better quarterback in that game. And we were the better team for that matter. But again, it did not show itself on the scoreboard. This isn't like last year when we came back and beat the Bears on the Bear Trap. We dominated that game last year. And then we let them come back at the very end because we were inept for some reason in that game and couldn't finish it. And then had to then recapture what was rightfully ours, right? We dominated that game last year. We dominated the game this year. We started slow. If you remember, we spotted them a 13-0 lead in the game and then came back and took a 24-13 lead, I believe. If I'm not mistaken. We were up after the Zach Ertz touchdown. We were up. I want to say it was 20. What did we end up losing that game? 25-24, right? I'm pretty sure it was 25-24. We lost that game. I don't remember what the score was after the Ertz touchdown, but it felt like we were going to win after the Ertz touchdown. You couldn't have convinced me we were going to lose that game. It was 22-24. So my guess is it was 16. It was 24-16. They scored a touchdown. They probably went for 2, didn't get it. They were down 2, and Jayden fumbled the snap, and then they went down, got the game-winning field goal. But so in 3 of those 4 starts, he did not turn the ball over once. I would tell you that despite the 2 turnovers in the Bears game, he was outstanding in that game. He was outstanding in the Chargers game. I would tell you, and he was solid against the Giants in week 1. I'd tell you, even though he didn't turn the ball over in that game, his worst game was the Green Bay game in week 2 of the games that he started and finished. And with that said, for as poorly as it felt like he played and the team played, he wasn't the only one that night. We were awful collectively as a unit, right? The team was bad all the way around. You know, sans for maybe special teams, they gave us some really good field position that night. And the defense got some stops early, got some stops late, but in between they were awful, right? We were down 7 despite him not playing well in that game in the 4th quarter. 17-10. I digress. 63% completion percentage. We know he can be so much better than that. We've seen him be, over 70% consistently in his rookie season. But I just want you to keep in mind, we were excited for Jayden Daniels dots to Chris Moore in the end zone that weren't caught. We had to be excited about a Chris Moore touchdown that he caught against the Bears. We were excited and had to be excited about Robbie Chosen going up and catching footballs contested catch situations against the Cowboys. These were the things that Jayden had to deal with this season. He threw to Terry McLaurin in week 2 and didn't throw to him again until week 14. He threw to Noah Brown in week 2 and didn't throw to him again the rest of the season. He did not have Deebo Samuel in the week 7 game versus Dallas. He did not have Deebo Samuel basically in the Bears game in week number 6. Yet, he still had a 63% completion percentage. It could have been a lot worse. And I'm not sitting here telling you that he didn't miss some throws that he should have hit this year, because he missed some throws, without question. But having to deal with the turnover at the receiver position, how many drops did we have this season from guys too? All right. 219 yards per game, not 219 points per game, 219 yards per game passing, which is right around where he was last year. 44 rush yards per game, which is a decent number. 5 yards a carry. That's probably a little bit down from where he was last year. But the overall sentiment here, the overarching theme, if you will, was Jayden was good on to 2026. And that's essentially where I am. So I just want to go through those 4 games in particular quickly, because I thought those were the games where he was healthy. I told you after the Dallas hamstring injury, I never really thought he was the same. I never thought he was the same. He came back against Seattle, and it didn't feel like the same Jayden. And that was before the elbow. And maybe had he not injured the elbow the following week against the Dolphins the following week against Detroit, he might have looked more like himself. But it didn't feel like the Jayden that we had seen before the injury. The hamstring injury against Dallas. So week 1 against the Giants, I thought it was a solid performance. I think it left a lot of us longing for more. I think there was a lot left to be desired in that game. But I think the biggest takeaway from that game was the absence of Terry and Noah in the summer was felt in week 1, because, as Cliff had said numerous times leading up to week 1 and has said numerous times since week 1 during the season, you can't replace reps. The reps you get in practice are invaluable. It leads to success in the reps that you run in practice. Terry just talked about the touchdown that he had against the Giants this past Sunday and how they repped it in practice. And then he talked to the quarterbacks. You know, they put together a little clip for him, showed him how he should run the route. And then the coverage came up. He ran the route the way that the quarterbacks instructed him to. And you see the end result because it was repped in practice, right? You could feel the lack of reps for Jayden with Terry and Noah, despite all of the DQ banked reps conversations. They weren't on the same page, but he was on the same page clearly with Deebo Samuel in week 1, the guy that he had spent all the time with over the summer. And they did some really good things in that week 1 game. And he hit Zach Ertz for a touchdown, the guy that he always looked for in the red zone. All right. So you get through that Giants game and you're like, hey, we can be better, but you'll take it. You'll get the win. You'll improve. You'll be better. You're all excited. Week 2, Green Bay. And until Jayden and Cliff collectively show me differently, I'm just going to assume that they're going to be miserable on any short week that this team plays on. So I am not looking forward to the Cowboys game because Cliff will not have a full allotment of days to put together a game plan, and I think he's going to struggle. Now, we'll see if the extra day that he'll have, normally it's 4 days. It's going to be 5 because it's a Saturday game, and then they play on Thursday. See if the extra day helps. But until he shows me that a short week like this one coming up after the Eagles game is one that he can navigate, put together a real game plan that gives his team a chance, I'm going to assume that he's not capable. And Jayden struggles in those moments as well. So until those two show me that they can be themselves and be dynamic on a short week, I'm just going to assume that they can't. So Jayden's play was reflective of that, of a guy that struggles on Thursday nights. Same with Cliff. The play calling was awful that night. Jayden wasn't good that night. I've said this, the 2 worst Jayden Daniels performances that I've seen were both Thursday night games. I don't think that's a coincidence. The first one, we chalked it up to, oh, he's still injured and, he's not the same Jayden right now. I don't think that was the case. I just think that him and Cliff stink on Thursdays. He gets injured that night. We don't have him for the next 2 weeks. He comes back against the Chargers. Had to shake the rust off, right? First quarter and a half, a little rusty. It didn't help that the defense really didn't give Jayden and the offense opportunities to possess the football. If you recall, the Chargers were marching the football up and down the field early in that ball game. They took the opening drive down the field, scored a touchdown, took the second drive down the field, ended up having to settle for a field goal. I think it might have been the opposite. Opening drive, they had to settle for the field goal. I think the opening drive, they had to settle for a field goal, and then like Mikey or somebody jumped off sides foolishly, which gave them another opportunity. They ended up scoring a touchdown, and then the next drive, they marched it right back down the field and scored a touchdown, and it was 10-0. And then they were driving again, and then Quan Martin forced a fumble that we thought was going to change the entire tenor of this season. And then it was after that forced fumble that Jayden and the offense came to life. And he was lights out after that. You remember the throw that Jayden made? He had a couple of big-time throws in that game. Remember the one to, first of all, to Luke, the deep ball. Oh, my God. That was a thing of beauty. Great catch by Luke. But you said the audio's muted again? Is the audio muted again? I think these are all old. I think these are all old comments. Is that okay? I had to make sure. I seen a bunch of comments, but I think those were all old comments. I was about to say, okay, I got to start over now, right? That throw to Luke was ridiculous. It's probably one of his best throws of the season. But then I think the best throw of the season is the one to Debo to cap that one off on the 4th down at the end of that game when they could have easily settled for the field goal. And instead, they went for the jugular vein. And Jayden's just drifting and drifting and drifting to his right. And it seems like he's just throwing it away, right? No, he's dropping a dime in the back corner of the end zone to Debo. And you're just like, that's my quarterback, man. Jayden Daniels was spectacular in the latter portion of the first half, and the entire second half. Then you go to the Chicago game the following week, and I know he threw an interception. I know he had the fumble, and that's all anybody wants to talk about at the end of that game. I thought it was his best game of the season. Yeah, I know the mistakes happened, but he was dialed in, and you got to remember, there was no Debo that night, basically. Debo was a decoy. Remember, at least he still had a healthy Debo in week 5 versus the Chargers. Debo really did his thing. Bill was outstanding. He had some help. The run game was non-existent against Chicago. If you recall, the Bears were supposed to have this lousy run defense, and we were supposed to be able to take advantage of it. And we couldn't do shit on the ground. Debo was a decoy. He was not himself. And so we had Jayden throwing to the likes of Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, and Chris Moore. I didn't even want to say his name. He had 3 touchdowns in that game passing. And those were the 3 guys that caught them. Jalen Lane, or excuse me, he had a big pass to Jalen Lane on the sluggo, the stop, not the sluggo, the stop and go. And then he hit Zach Ertz for the 3rd of his 3 touchdown passes. But he had a Chris Moore touchdown pass, a Luke McCaffrey touchdown pass, and a Zach Ertz touchdown pass. But again, he had no receivers that night. I thought it was his best performance of the season. I know the Chargers one was clean. It looked like the Jayden from the year prior, but I thought his most complete performance was Chicago. And it sucked that the turnovers happened, but he did that without a run game, without Debo, without Terry, without Noah. And he put up 3 touchdown passes that day. Like, don't tell me Jayden, when he was healthy this season, didn't look like Jayden, because he looked like Jayden against the Giants. You remember him laughing at Brian Burns, who's one of the more athletic edges in football. As he's turning the corner on him, he can't catch him. Like, I watched Jackson Dart try to turn the corner on Bobby Wagner, and he couldn't. Like, our guy's different. He was laughing at Brian Burns as he was turning the corner on him. For as poor as he played in the Green Bay game, we were right there. We were right there. All we needed was a defensive stop that we knew we weren't going to get, but we were right there. He made a beautiful back shoulder throw to Noah Brown right through his hands, if you recall, in that Green Bay game. It's the best throw of the night, right through Noah Brown's hands. Again, I talked about the completion percentage. There were some drops in there. And, like I said, Jayden missed some throws. There's some throws where he was a little errant, and you were like, come on, Jayden. Need you to hit that, bro. But there were absolutely, the team had their fair share of drops too. Where you go, what are we doing here? In those 4 games, Jayden Daniels showed me all I needed to know about what he is, what he continues to be, and what I can expect from him in 2026 when he's healthy. What needs to be done, and this is another conversation that we'll have, at a later date and time, what needs to be done is they need to surround him with more talent. Noah Brown can't come back here. I don't know if Debo Samuel is going to be allowed to come back here. If he doesn't, and if he's not, I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be upset. We need more receivers. We need to figure out what we're going to do at tight end. We need to figure out what we're going to do at running back. But one thing's for sure. We have a lot of off-season needs, this team does. And a lot of things that, as fans, hell, the organization probably should be concerned about, should be worried about. Here's what I, as a fan, am not concerned about at all, whatsoever. Jayden Daniels in the quarterback position for the Washington Commanders, especially if you bring back Marcus Mariota. Mariota is going to show you this week, as he's shown you just about every single time he's been given the keys throughout the entire week, getting all the reps. that he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in football. Despite us not winning a bunch of games this season, everyone that Marcus Mariota has started, and he knew he was going to be the starter, and he's gotten all of the reps in practice, this team has come out. They've been efficient. They've been effective on offense, and we've had a shot to win. There hasn't been one Marcus Mariota game where we've just gotten our asses kicked and never had a shot. The closest you got to that was the Detroit game. And again, Marcus and the offense was just fine in that game. We did not lose that game in the capacity that we lost that game in because of Marcus and the offense. That game was strictly on the defense and their inability to get a stop whatsoever. So I'm just going to tell you this right now. Jayden Daniels will be back in 2026 with a vengeance. If they surround him with the type of talent that he deserves, that he needs, that he should have, the rest of the league will be put on notice. And this guy, that whole conversation, I'm not going to stop talking my shit about 5. Y'all know that. I'm going to talk my shit about 5. Because I believe we got the best quarterback in the NFC here in Washington. I may not be talking that MVP shit, but I'm going to be talking my best quarterback in the conference shit, best quarterback in the division shit, and one of them ones shit. I'm going to be back to that again. That never ended, by the way. I just had to mute that because he hasn't been healthy. You give me 5 healthy again, and I'm back on my shit. Because as I've just told you, in the 4 games when he was healthy this year, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, 216 yards per game, 63% completion percentage. And again, while that's not great, I just told you he had a game, the best game I think he had all season, for me at least. He had no Debo, no Noah, and no Terry. And yes, Debo played in the game, but he really didn't play in the game. And he had 3 touchdown passes. There was a game against Dallas this season where Jayden Daniels stepped out on the field and his starting receivers were Chris Moore and Robbie Chosen. I can't make this shit up. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. He went into an NFL game with Robbie Chosen and Chris Moore as his 2 starting wide receivers. Anyway, we're in good hands, Commanders fans. We're in good hands with Jayden Daniels. Anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and get into other news where we heard from DQ today. So we'll talk about what he had to say at his press conference. The Commanders had some news and notes today that we'll take a look at, talk about. And then I want to talk about a massive advantage that I've already brought to your doorstep before, but I want to take a look at it a little bit further. And I'm going to reiterate some of the things that I've already said, because this kind of goes in line with the conversation we had yesterday. DQ talked about yesterday with Jayden and complimentary football surrounding Jayden. I think it is imperative that we see more complimentary football around Jayden. We really haven't seen that this season. But I think there's a chance in 2026. The pieces of that puzzle feel like they're getting put together, and they're setting up for next year to be this excellent bounce back year for the Commanders. And this is one of the secret weapons. So we'll talk about that. But before we do any of that, let's go ahead and get a word from our sponsor, come back on the other side, and then we'll dive into In Other News. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs, You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. All right. So let's talk about some of the Commanders' news and notes first, and then we'll get to the one of the Commanders' strengths, I think, now and into the future, and then how that can benefit this team moving forward. Let's take a look first at some Commanders roster moves that have been made. The Commanders today placed wide receiver Noah Brown on the reserve injured list. I think this is the last time we'll see Noah Brown in a Commanders uniform, or I think Sunday was the last time we'll see him in a Commanders uniform. They love them some Noah Brown, though, so you just never know with this group. But I don't, honestly, I'm not one of these people that Noah Brown has to go. You just can't keep him here in lieu of some other receiver that deserves to have a chance here. Like, he can't be taking up a roster spot, stopping somebody from being here, if you get what I'm saying. Like, he shouldn't be the reason you don't draft a receiver, you don't sign a guy in free agency, et cetera, et cetera. He can't be, like, if he's just here to compete, cool. Like, you could do a lot worse than Noah Brown here competing for a roster spot. He can't be the reason you don't go out and be aggressive in free agency or the draft. He shouldn't count as one of the guys you're relying on next season. I personally would prefer him to just not be here at all. But if he's here, I'm not going to throw a conniption fit. He just better not be the reason that you're not more aggressive, because he was one of the reasons we weren't more aggressive last offseason. They were counting on Noah Brown. You can't count on Noah Brown anymore. They designated cornerback Darius Rush to the practice squad. So apparently he injured himself, did Darius Rush. That sucks, because if we needed more corner help, we were kind of wanting to see what the South Carolina product Darius Rush looked like. But he's injured, so he's done. They then re-signed Chris Moore from the practice squad. You can't get anywhere. We can't ever get far away from Chris Moore, right? They love them some Chris Moore. They brought back River Craycraft and tight end G. Scott Jr. to the practice squad. Now, let me just talk to you about G. Scott Jr. for a second. This was a guy that I was somewhat impressed with. Very, very limited production at the Ohio State University. But G. Scott Jr. is very intriguing. Now, he's not going to play this season, so you're not going to see him. But he is a guy that you bring through the offseason program. He's around. We'll add him to the list of tight ends that we have. We got a boatload of them. And you let him compete. Watching film last year for the draft, I watched a ton of Ohio State, Travion Henderson, and all of the guys that came out last year. Quinshad Junkins. I watched a ton of Ohio State film last year. Also, massive Emeka Buka fan. So, again, watched a ton of Ohio State film. G. Scott Jr. showed up a couple times catching a football and showing off some real athleticism. And I'm like, who is this guy? Because he wasn't on the radar for anyone. And I found out, after, I told you one of the joys of watching film is uncovering a gem, if you will. And I'm not necessarily saying that G. Scott was a gem by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am saying is that I saw an athletic guy, and there's a place for athletic tight ends in this league. So I looked him up, and I realized he had no production. He was undersized. I was like, okay, this isn't going to play well. And he didn't get drafted, and that was the end of that. He ended up on New England's practice squad. They released him. He's now on our practice squad. He's 6'2" and 5'8". So let's just call him 6'3". He's 240 pounds. But when he was measured out at the Ohio State Pro Day, he was 6'2" and 5'8", 238 pounds. He ran a 4.6 40. He tossed up the 2 1/4 like 24 times. He had a hell of a vertical jump. He's what Ed would declare an athletic freak. I'm intrigued by G. Scott Jr. He's 24 years old, so he fits the timeline. He's another one of these young guys you want to see them work with and see what he can do. I don't see any reason, and again, this is when I saw him, this is who I thought of. Another undersized tight end that ended up, carving out a really good NFL career for themselves. But I don't see why he can't be a Jonnu Smith type of guy. I don't see why he can't be that. Now we're going to find out if we can actually develop somebody, right? This is a guy that I think is a developmental prospect that if developed correctly, he could actually add value to this football team. We'll see. He could be something. He could be nothing. I'm intrigued, to say the least. So those were the moves that they've made. We'll talk about a more significant development here in a bit. DQ told us about today. But staying in phase with this, here is the Commanders' advantage that I've been speaking about this season. And I think it's going to be huge for us next year because in a lost season, these are the things that get lost. We don't talk about the positives in a year where you've had an 8-game losing streak with 5 of those 8 games being losses by 21 points or more. You don't talk about the positives. All you want to talk about is firing guys, who needs to go, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. No one wants to talk about anything good that's happening. Well, I've been talking about the Commanders' special teams all season. Even when Jalen Lane wasn't getting opportunities and he wasn't catching the football at the receiver position and people wanted to shit on him, I kept caping for him because I said, he is exactly what they drafted him to be. Would you like him to be more on offense? Sure. But that's not what they drafted him to be. This is from Grant Paulson on X. He writes, the Commanders' special teams units have been fantastic. We've talked a lot about how good Larry Izzo's return units have been, but his coverage units have been just as good. This has gone under the radar in a brutal season. Well, it hasn't gone under my radar. I've told you this time and time again, including on Sunday after the special teams was extraordinary. And if we had a place kicker, I'd put our special teams unit as a collective up there with the best of them in the NFL. The only reason that I always stop short of calling this group elite and putting them up there with the best is because I always have to say, except for kicker. I always have to throw that in there. And you can't say except for kicker because kicker is a big part of your special teams unit, right? Well, if Jake Moody is going to continue to kick well like he did on Sunday, small sample size, I know, but he has not missed a kick here yet, field goal wise. And the one extra point that he missed, I continue to harp on, the wind took that. And I love the way he adjusted his next kick to take into consideration what the wind did to his last kick. So that was very, very encouraging. So these are opponent kickoff returns this season. The Commanders are currently third right now in opponent return average, just behind the Rams and the Colts. So when we kick the football off, the returners are averaging 23.6 yards a return on kicks by the Commanders, which means you're not getting it back to the 30-yard line. Most times you return the football, which again speaks to our coverage unit, because you think about the rule, and if you kick it in the end zone, they get it at the 35, right? So instead of giving up that kind of field position, we're kicking it to the 1, the 2-yard line, the 4, whatever, and you're only getting 23 yards, roughly 24 yards on your return. So if we kick it to the 1, you're getting to the 25. We kick it to the 2, you're getting to the 26. That's a massive difference in yardage of where that ball's going to go if that thing is kicked into the end zone, or you're not covering kicks well. I looked at remember we played the Atlanta Falcons earlier this season, and every return in that game was like out to the 50. Couldn't be us. That ain't us. This statistic here that you're looking at shows that it ain't us. You keep going though. And I talked about how good our coverage units are on punt returns. First of all, it starts with Tress Way. Tress Way is phenomenal. He gets good hang time on his kicks. And we got fiends, man. This is why I think we have a chance to be special on special teams for a long time, because we have fiends, and for the most part, they're young. The only fiend that we have that isn't young is Nick Ballore. He's the only one. Reeves is all-pro Revo, still relatively young, especially in special teams years. You know, special teamers can play till they like 40 years old. You know, you had Slater in New England was like 39, 40 when he retired, and still playing at an elite level when he hung them up. Those of you of a certain age remember Bill Bates. You remember Don Beebe, elite special teamers. You can play for a very long time as an elite special teamer. But Tyler Owens is a fiend. Percy Butler is a fiend. Like, we got a number of these dudes that are elite hunters. Colson Yankoff is a fiend. You get to the punt returns. We're number 1 in the league in opposing teams' punt return average. And look at the margin. Look how wide of a margin it is between us and second place. You're not getting 4 yards on your punt return when you come up against the Commanders. You're not getting 4 yards. The next closest is roughly 7 yards. 3 yards difference we're talking about between second place and the Commanders. So when I tell you that we have a distinct advantage on special teams if we could just get the kicking situation squared away, and now you add Jalen Lane into that mix as an elite punt returner, and don't discredit the guys blocking up front for him. You know, Jalen Lane isn't out here breaking 6 tackles on some Devin Hester shit, Dante Hall, juking dudes and breaking guys off in phone booth-like manners. He's just running straight up gaping holes and then outrunning the kicker. Now, he's doing a good job of picking his feet up. Terry McLaurin could learn a lesson or two so that he doesn't get clipped and tripped by that last defender. But Lane isn't having to, change directions on these returns, if you've noticed. But he's fearless. He's running straight. He's running fast. And he's hitting a hole immediately. And you got to credit the blockers for that. Something that has nothing to do with nothing is the fact that on every one of his punt returns, there's a flag. It's rare that a special teams return has a flag and it's not on the return team, right? Both of his returns had flags. We both thought, on both of them, it's coming back. But they were on the kicking team. Both times. What's the likelihood of that? I said all of that to say this. L to the Izzo is elite at what he does as a special teams coordinator. And our special teams has a chance to be really special next season. Like, it's already really good. Borderline elite. You add in a real place kicker, and the only thing that we would be missing at this point is a game-breaking kickoff return man. And again, while we know that Luke McCaffrey isn't running anything back to the crib, he was an automatic 40 to 50 piece every time. Just about. You add in Debo when he was back there, and I don't know if Debo's going to be here next year, but again, this special teams has a chance to be one of the best in football, and that would be a hell of a compliment. Could you imagine this season? Could you imagine the field position consistently that was being given up to our starting quarterbacks? Could you imagine if Jayden gets a full season of that? He really didn't get to take advantage of the special teams this season. You think about it. We had some good returns against Green Bay. They squandered those in week 2. But that was Thursday night football. That's Jayden and Cliff at their worst, right? We had some excellent returns against the Raiders. He didn't play. The best return day of the season from a kickoff standpoint was Atlanta. He didn't play in that game. I think we were solid against, because any game that Luke McCaffrey played in, we were usually solid. Even better if Debo was back there. I think we were solid against the Chargers and the Bears. I don't think we had anything really. I think we might have had a dynamic one against the probably had one in each of those games if I had to guess. But for some inexplicable reason, Luke McCaffrey had a Red Bull against Dallas, and he thought he had wings and he could fly. And so he tried to take himself out. And I think pretty much after that, I want to say after the Falcons game, after the Raiders game, Debo stopped returning kickoffs because he had to be our number 1 wide receiver. Then he went back there 1 week, and I think he had a fumble, and they just took him off of kickoffs altogether. Could you imagine if Jayden got that kind of field position for an entire season, what he could do with it? Because he doesn't get turnovers from the defense. He doesn't get short fields via the defense. That could be such a weapon for this team next year. So, and imagine if we actually got a good defense. This field position that I'm talking about right now that you're looking at on the screen that we're recreating based off of our coverage units getting down there and covering kicks, whether it be a kickoff or a punt. Could you imagine if we actually had a quality defense that could get off the field, could force 3 and outs, kind of field position, we'd be getting Jayden in the offense? Or if they could actually force a turnover, kind of field position they'd be giving Jayden in the offense? This special teams, this commander's advantage could be huge if we can maximize it, meaning get the most out of it by having a defense that can get a stop after a great punt by Tressway that's fielded at the 11 and we tackle the guy at the 14-yard line. You get a 3 and out, you're getting the football somewhere close to, if not past midfield. And with Jalen Lane returning the kick, who knows what could happen? Anyway, I digress. So let's talk about what DQ had to say at his press conference today. And we're gonna stay in line with our normal week. I know it's an abbreviated week because the game is on a Saturday. That's why DQ spoke today, and he said that today is effectively their Wednesday, but it's really not, right? Like, today's practice wasn't a real practice. Tomorrow's going to be their first real practice of the week. But in essence, today was their Wednesday. I'm going to keep today as Tuesday. Tomorrow will be our Wednesday. Thursday will be our, Thursday. And Friday will be a little bit different from, a standpoint of how we conduct business, because it'll be the day before the game, but it'll be, keys to victory, that sort of thing. So it'll kind of stay in line, but everything will feel a little off, I guess, right? Because I'm assuming they're going to have an injury report on Wednesday and Thursday, and then the final injury report will come out on Thursday. That normally happens on Friday. That's my guess, right? But we're not looking at injury reports today. I don't even know if one came out today, to be honest with you. But anyway, we're going to keep things the same here. But DQ spoke today, and he's continuing with this theme, right, of an in-season tournament in the NFC East, these final 4 games of the season. So after they beat the Giants, he's talking about surviving and advancing, and I'm like, DQ's so corny, right? But whatever you got to do to motivate the troops, man, knock yourself out. He continued to emphasize that they have to produce the ball better and they have to take care of it better. They didn't do those things against the Giants. You did force a turnover, but you still gave it away twice, and you fumbled 4 times, and you were lucky to come away with the victory. So I love the fact that despite the win, he's not backing off of the whole idea of being better at producing the ball and taking care of the ball, and et cetera, right? He then talked about Jayden Daniels, and he was asked about Jayden's season. And he was like, look, I can't really give you a breakdown of Jayden's season because I haven't really, looked at it in its totality yet. We're still kind of, locked in on this year. But he's like, everybody didn't have the season that they wanted to have. Clearly, the record reflects that. But he said that Jayden is going to continue to practice during the, season, which he talked about yesterday. And that's invaluable reps that he's going to get. And, he's going to, and Jayden, you heard in the scrum today that I played for you, him talk about things that he's going to do, right? He's going to pick the brains of the defensive backs coaches and be in those receiver meetings and things of that nature to kind of gain a better understanding of what defenses want to do, how wide receivers can set things up and how he can be, better in sync with them. So, there's a way he can continue to get better despite not being on the field. And, you want to see him maximize all of that. So, DQ talked about Jayden continuing to be a part of the team the rest of the season, despite not being on the field. I thought this was an important conversation here. This was the thing that I used to harp on with Sam Howell when it felt like Eric Bieniemy was trying to change who Sam Howell was as a quarterback, right? They kept preaching to him, don't take sacks, don't hold on to the football. And I'm like, I understand all of that. You want him to throw it away. But at some point, you're going to scare him into not even looking down the field. The internal clock's going to go off, and he's just going to be looking to throw the football away, right? You keep getting people telling Jay, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to slide, you shouldn't run, you got to protect yourself, and this, that, and eventually, like I'm so glad to hear Jayden basically say, like, I am who I am. This is how I play. I don't want anybody changing his style of play. I don't want. It's like trying to muzzle Lamar Jackson. You can't do that. Lamar Jackson without his legs and him being dynamic. And, Lamar, I think at times gets in his own head because I think Lamar came into this league as more of a runner than a passer. And he got better over time as a passer, but it was hard for him to shake the stigma of being a mobile quarterback that was run first. And I felt like after 2 MVP seasons, he would be confident enough in his abilities and be self-assured enough, right? Secure enough in what he's proven over the life of his career that when he feels like he needs to take off and run, he could do it with impunity, right? With no worries about what anybody has to say. But I still feel like there's times now Lamar is dead set on proving he can beat people with his arm, and it cost him and his team. I've seen games where I'm like, Lamar his mom even told him, bro, you got to run. What are you doing? I remember the Eagles game last year. Lamar refused to run, and his mom told him after the game, son, you got to run more. And then the next game he ran, and after the game, he said, my mom told me I got to run more. Because he's really out here trying to prove to people he can throw it. I don't ever want Jayden to feel that black quarterback complex, which is what I call it. I don't ever want him to feel that. I don't ever want him to feel like I got to prove to people I can throw from the pocket. And I don't know if he'll ever really have the stigma that Lamar has, because Jayden came in throwing the football immediately. So I don't want him changing who he is. I want him to always feel comfortable running, diving, all of the things that makes him Jayden Daniels. I don't want him taking big hits when he doesn't need to. Use the sidelines, get down when you need to get down, all that good stuff, but just be you. And, DQ said, we are trying to help him alter his game slightly without changing fundamentally who he is as a quarterback. As long as he's still Jayden Daniels, I'm fine with it. DQ talked about his year 3 approach. And he basically was asked how, because DQ is a master note taker. And so he takes these tedious notes on everything, and it helps him to be better. And he said he's already working on an approach for next year, some things that didn't go the way that they had intended them to go this year, how they can be better next year. He said he's going to have Zach Ertz talk to him. Ertz is supposed to be scheduled for surgery. I think he said next week or later on this week. And he said he's going to talk to him before he has his surgery to ask him some questions, pick his brain on some things. Remember, DQ told us when he first got this job that one of the things he did after the Atlanta gig, and Logan Paulson actually confirmed this, was that he called former players to ask them questions and gather information about his first head coaching tenure in Atlanta, and things that he did well, things he could have done better. And he's always collecting data. DQ is always collecting data. So he's like, yeah, I got a lot of ideas for things I can do better in year 3. I like the sound of that. I love evolution. I love growth, but I'm about that action, boss. So we'll see what it turns into. DQ clearly loved hearing this next question that was posed to him, which was basically, you know, how does it make DQ feel to know that the players in the locker room have his back, that they're not quitting on him, that the main reason that they're still out there fighting and doing the things they're doing is because of DQ. And you had guys like Terry and Mikey and, you know, guys like that after the game on Sunday basically say DQ has kept this thing together. And he's the reason that we're still out here competing at the level that we're competing at. And he said that made him smile. You know, that made him feel good to know that the culture that they've built could withstand what he deemed to be the toughest stretch of his career, right? And, you know, the question was asked about Jayden being out and how do you look at other players and keep them engaged with Jayden being out. And DQ had to reemphasize, like, I hate that he has to keep repeating himself because it's like people don't understand this whole concept. Jayden Daniels is not healthy. He has not been cleared for contact. And DQ has to keep saying this every time because people keep insinuating that they've put Jayden Daniels essentially away on the top shelf despite being healthy because they don't want him to get injured. And now they're trying to create this narrative of, well, how are other players going to view that? They're dealing with injuries, but Jayden Daniels isn't. Like, first of all, Jayden is different. That's number one. Mind your business. And number two, Jayden isn't healthy. He has not been medically cleared to play. So this whole concept of, oh, well, how are other guys in the locker room taking Jayden being out? Ain't like they just sitting him. He's perfectly fine. He could play, but they're like, nah, we're not going to play him. And even if that were the case, guess what? Deal with the shit. Anyway, my favorite part of the press conference was this. Drake Jackson is a full go this week in practice, barring a setback. And hey, let's knock on some wood here. Barring a setback, Drake Jackson should be all systems go this Saturday versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm excited. I can't lie to you. We got to get through this week now. He's the defensive Noah Brown. So we got to get through this week. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that gave me extra added motivation for this game. If he's out there, that's one of those guys that I'm excited to see. And again, I could be excited for no reason. He get out there and he could look like Preston Smith. But at least I would know at that point, and then I could stop putting so much on his return and what he could potentially be. If I know he's a big nothing burger, then I can move on as knowing as such, and then I won't add him into the mix. Even if he proves to be a solid rotational depth piece, great. You got another one. Better than what we have now, which is nothing. We have nothing. Jacob Martin is all we have. We have nothing. He talked about Antonio Hamilton. I myself have tried to, explain to y'all that this is not a guy. Somebody sent me a message, multiple messages, basically trying to insinuate that Antonio Hamilton could be CB1 here. And I'm like, I just looked at him like, I just looked at the comment and I felt like Happy Gilmore. You remember the guy that just pops up and just shakes his head no in dismay? That's how I felt, because I had this whole conversation with everybody the other day about, let's not do the whole Antonio Hamilton thing. Please, let's not do that. He's 32 years old. Let's not do this. He'll be 33 here in the next couple weeks. Let's pump the brakes and drive slow, homie. Drive slow. He then gave an Eagles analysis. They're really good. period. Right. Then he talked about things that the team needs to be better at. They got to be better with penalties. They were awful on Sunday. They got to be better with the turnover margin. They got to protect the football. Obviously, 4 fumbles, 2 of them lost, and they only had 1 takeaway. So he lost the turnover battle yet again. And then he said, we didn't have enough pass rush. I'm like, DQ, if you're not blitzing, bro, which I don't see you blitzing because blitzing equals one-on-one, which equals us getting beat. You're not going to get pass rush. Sorry. Like, you should know that this shit going to look like the Minnesota game pretty much the rest of the way on out. You just got to hope that the opposition makes some mistakes. Pretty much. Just like the Giants did. Some drop passes, some missed throws. You got to hope for that stuff because you ain't getting to the quarterback. You know damn well we ain't sniffing Jalen Hurts on Saturday. We won't even come close to him. And they got issues up front. Like, they got some guys out. It don't matter. It don't matter. We're not getting even remotely close to this man. He will have all day to throw. All day. He said things that he liked. He liked the big plays. I don't think we really talked about this, but we had a lot of big plays in the game on Sunday. You had the 61-yard Jalen Lane punt return for the touchdown. Lane also had another 23-yard punt return. That's the one I told you he almost popped. You had I think it was 46-yard Terry completion. You had the 36-yard Ben Sinnott catch and run. You had the Bill 16-yard touchdown run. Remember, the Terry touchdown might have been longer than that. It might have been 50-some yards. The Terry touchdown was on 1st and 20. We had a number of chunk plays, sizable gains, something that we're not accustomed to on Sunday versus the Giants. Don't get used to them because the Giants stink, but did have a lot of big plays, and DQ said he did like that. He did like the defense's response to all of the mistakes. You know, they sudden change of possession a couple of times with those fumbles. One in particular, because the first fumble they gave up, they ended up giving up a touchdown. The second one, they preserved the lead, right? Got the 4th down stop. They got another 4th down stop in the end zone. So he liked the way the defense responded a couple of times. He loved the complimentary football before half, which he brought up multiple times. And then he talked about the players still being invested in him. He said, I told the players after the Sunday game that, I hate that we're in the spot that we're in, but if I ever had to go through a situation like this, I wouldn't choose to go through it with anybody but y'all, basically. And he said this is the second time he said this, so I know he meant it. He said, quote, "This is the toughest stretch of my career," close quote. He's like, I've never been through anything like this. I bet you haven't. 8 straight, 5 of which 3 touchdowns or more. I bet you haven't been through anything like this, especially off of the season we just had. You can tell he was blindsided by 2025. And then he gave a quick Laramie Tunzel update, which he basically said, today isn't a real practice, so you can't really know if Laramie's going to go. He said tomorrow, which will be effectively the Thursday, which we know Laramie normally gets Wednesdays off. So this is still not a really good day for Laramie because this would be the day he'd be off, and Thursday would be the day he would actually practice. But everything's getting moved up a day. So he said Laramie's got to get on the field and show the ability to have the strength and do all of the things that he's usually able to do, and that will determine if he can play or not. I'm just going to assume that he can't go. DQ also talked about the young guys stepping up, and he singled out Brandon Coleman as a guy that stepped up, and someone, and someone brought this up on one of the streams, like, hey, Brandon Coleman might be our new swing tackle, and maybe that is the case. I don't think it's ideal to get a swing tackle in the 3rd round, but it beats poor. It beats not having Brandon Coleman be able to do anything. And he ended up being, what was the guy we drafted in the 3rd round out of Arkansas as a center who ended up doing absolutely jack diddly poo squat here? What was his name? It beats doing that shit. Because Brandon Coleman could have easily turned into that type of player who is here today, gone tomorrow. He could have turned into a 2nd round for Darian Mathis for us. So it could be a hell of a lot worse. I know that's a low bar. And so, yes, Ricky Stromberg. Thank you, the Code Talker 5742. Ricky mother effing Stromberg. Yeah, could have been that. So if he serves a purpose here, it's better than nothing, right? Better than nothing. Anyway, I digress. All right, let's get to the comment section, and then I will turn you guys loose. Let's see. There was a super chat here before anybody got here. See if I can track that one down first, because it's not showing up on my screen. Hopefully it shows up here still, so I can get to that one first. Yeah, there it is. Let's get to that one first. Ben Jones, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Ben writes, hey, Lou, hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, really appreciate you. I want to see how you would feel if Cliff left and Anthony Lynn got promoted to offensive coordinator, ? Hashtag SOTG, hashtag replay game. Shout out to my guy, Ben, man. Really appreciate you. All right, so here's the thing. Anthony Lynn is best suited to do what he's currently doing, which is coach the running backs. We've seen Anthony Lynn, the offensive coordinator. We've seen Anthony Lynn, the head coach. And while he isn't terrible at either of those, he's not great at either of those either. Anthony Lynn, if you make him the offensive coordinator, we've seen this before, he's going to be super conservative. You might have the #1 rush offense in football, but you are not going to throw the football with any kind of consistency whatsoever. That you have Anthony Lynn as your offensive coordinator if your quarterback is Marcus Mariota. Yeah, Anthony Lynn would be a great offensive coordinator. You got Jayden Daniels at quarterback. Anthony Lynn is not the man for the job. So I love Anthony Lynn, the running backs coach. Don't want to see him be anything other than that here in Washington. So I'm good on Anthony Lynn. When he was in Buffalo as the offensive coordinator, they ran the shit out of the football with Fred Jackson, but their pass game stunk. And so I don't want that for us. I don't want that for us. So no, I'm good on Anthony Lynn being promoted to offensive coordinator. Thank you for the super chat, Ben Jones. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Reedy writes, LT, still cheering for that 4-game win streak. Next year, we'll need to fix this defense and be healthy. Would like to see the result. I mean, you might, if you're not getting a 4-game win streak, Reedy, but you can cheer all you like for it. We've had this conversation already. You're not getting a 4-game heater, but we may win one more game. It's a very distinct possibility now that the Cowboys lost to the Vikings, which I did not see happening. Now the Eagles won't need that Week 18 game. And thus, they can rest their starters. I still believe Tanner McKee and the rest of the Eagles JV squad can beat our varsity right now. So you may win one more, but feel like that's highly unlikely at this point. So you're definitely not getting 4 in a row. That's for sure. Definitely have to fix this defense. That goes without saying. And would love to see what this looks like revamped, retooled, recalibrated next year with much more talent and guys taking steps forward. That first draft, having some of those guys take the next step. And last year's draft, having them take the next step. And, you know, some guys will be in contract seasons. Frankie Louvu will be in a contract year, and Tyler Biadasz and some of those guys. And you see if they'll step up in that contract year or not. So a lot of stuff to get to next year, a lot of questions to see how they'll be answered. But above all else, they need a strong offseason, free agency, draft, etc. Let's see how they build this thing up. No name here today. You're muted. Thanks. I told y'all when I'm muted, the only way that I won't know is if my other computer isn't on in front of me. And I was booting that computer up, and it's an old computer. It takes forever to boot up. And it was one of those times where it was just taking its sweet, precious time. So I didn't see all of the comments coming in. They weren't showing up on my screen. And then it finally booted up. I got it up, and that was the first thing I saw. I was like, oh my God, I'm muted. So sorry about that. Jay Willard, no sound. I apologize. Mi malo. Loser, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, watch Peters drag out the Tunzel extension to late August. I hope he learned his lesson from the Terry situation. Now, I can tell you this. One of the things that makes me feel a lot better about the Tunzel extension, and maybe I'm naive for this, is that Laramie Tunzel is his own representation. So there's no middleman. There's no, agent in the way, with an agenda or any of that, right? Peters is going to be talking directly to Laramie Tunzel. Hopefully they can get something done sooner rather than later, and we can put that behind us. We don't need another saga like we had with Terry. Now, yeah, I'm not putting that on Peters this offseason. I think he learns from his lesson. Now, again, Peters is all about the dollar bill, y'all. So if Tunzel is talking crazy with the numbers, clearly this thing could take a while. But if Tunzel's talking with some sense and Peters is ready to spend, I think it'll get done rather quickly. But, Peters ain't trying to overspend. So, and what you also got to remember is Tunzel, they traded for him. And although he has one more year left on his deal, they want him here long term. He's shown why they need to pay him, and they're going to pay him. So I hope you're wrong, but history suggests that you're right. If you go back to San Francisco, and again, I know he wasn't, in charge in San Francisco, but again, you'd be, and I talked about this all last year, you'd be remiss if you didn't factor in his time in San Francisco and how they handle contract extensions. And then you see what he did with Terry here. You see what he did with Sam Cosmi here. And it makes you feel like the shit ain't going to get done until sometime late in the summer, early in the fall. So let's hope that it doesn't get to that point. Tunzel already made it abundantly clear when he was traded here, sitting on that plantation porch when he did his first interview here, that he made it clear that, Adam Peters and company, that he wanted an extension. So let's get this thing done. Let's get this thing done. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Joe Rockhead, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, sup, Lou? Sup, Joe Rockhead? Do you recall JD5 having off-season camp with the wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs this year? I don't. And if not, I think it's vital for a better 2026. I do think that he threw with some of the receivers. I don't think he threw with the tight ends, running backs, and all that stuff. But I do think he tossed the football around with the receivers once in the offseason. I do believe that happened. I don't think it's vital for success, but it doesn't hurt for sure to have your guys come out. And, you know, everybody's got their own thing going on. Remember, there was one time where, I don't remember if it was Sam Howell or if it was Marcus Mariota. Somebody had put together a little, you know, passing camp for them and the receivers. And Terry, either he couldn't make it or he was only there for like a day. Like, everybody's got shit going on in the offseason. You make time for the things that are important. So if you put it together, guys are going to come. You just got to make sure you do it in advance so everybody can, you know, carve out that time for you in the offseason. We'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if he did something like that. But if he didn't, this is the thing about football now. This shit is damn near 12 months out of the year, like year round. So they got OTAs in April? I think they got some OTAs in March. They definitely have some in April. They got minis in May and June. And so it's cool to stage that, to set it up, and, you know, fans eat that type of shit up. But you get all of that same work at these minis. Like, the only ones you don't get it at are the ones at the very beginning where you're in phase 1, where there's no football, you're only doing strength and conditioning. But once you get to phase 2 and they introduce the football back into it, like, from that point forward, you're throwing the ball to these guys on air. You're getting the 7-on-7 work. You're getting the, you know, individual work with these receivers. I don't know if that's vital anymore. It's nice, though. It's nice. You'd love to see it, but it's not mandatory. I don't know how often Patrick Mahomes is getting his receivers together and throwing with them. I don't know how often Josh Allen is rallying the troops to throw the football with them during the offseason. Like, I don't know if that's mandatory. You have to do that to be successful. Sounds good. Andre 6-7 Poggers. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, if DQ brings back Noah and Moore, he hasn't learned from his last coaching stint, and I will lose all my faith in him. Noah just takes space and Moore sucks. Here's the reason why I don't think they're going to do it. I could be wrong about this. Last year, they had De'Ami Brown and more specifically, Olamide Zaccheaus, OZ. Both of those guys were integral parts of our run last year, specifically down the stretch, and easily could have been brought back. And instead, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters looked at each other and said, we can do better. We can upgrade both of those guys. Now, they didn't. They brought in Debo, and I would say that Debo was like a standalone guy. He wasn't a replacement for OZ or De'Ami Brown. He was a standalone piece that they brought in. It felt like Jalen Lane was supposed to be more of your, like, OZ replacement, a guy that they see can play the slot. Like, we've heard this from Adam Peters and even DQ. They think Jalen Lane is going to be a slot receiver. He's had to play outside because of all the injuries this year, but they think he's going to be a slot receiver. And clearly they knew he was an upgrade over OZ as a punt returner. So they see him as a guy that should be able to, you know, win inside, catch the football, you know, that sort of thing. And maybe we'll see Jalen Lane in more of that role next year. I don't know if they thought that Luke McCaffrey could replace De'Ami Brown speed-wise. I don't really know what their thought process was there, but they never really brought anybody in here to replace his speed. I hope they didn't think Chris Moore was going to do that. But they thought, my point is, they thought they could do better than both of those guys. So they didn't bring them back. It clearly had nothing to do with money for OZ. Now, for De'Ami, $10 million was crack money. That was those crack prices. Ain't no way. I said all that to say this. They have to know they can do better than Noah Brown and Chris Moore. Now, I could easily see both of them back after the season on some J-Mac shit where they just love the player so much that we'll bring him to camp and let him compete. And then you look up and damn, he's still here. I can't see any way that Chris Moore, he might be on the practice squad again next year. I hope not. I don't even want him there. Because just like Jameis Winston, if Chris Moore is on your practice squad, eventually, somehow, he's going to weasel his way onto your active roster at some point. I don't even want him around. But if he's with the team in the offseason, he'll have a chance to compete. It's Adam Peters' job. I said the same thing about Noah Brown earlier. I don't care if those guys are around in March, April, May, June, July, and August. I don't give a shit. Noah Brown can be back. Chris Moore can be back for all of those months. And I'm putting the onus on AP. You better make sure. I'm talking to Adam Peters. You better make sure that them bastards aren't good enough to be on the active roster when you trim the bitch down to 53. That's Adam Peters' job. He failed us there last year at the receiver position. He failed us last year. He better not let that shit happen this year. I don't give a shit if Noah Brown and Chris Moore are one of 15 receivers that they have here in the spring and into the summer. You got 90 guys on the roster. You could do a hell of a lot worse than Noah Brown and Chris Moore. I would prefer to have different guys here, but if they don't, that's fine. I just know they better not be one of the best 6 when the shit is all said and done. That's all I know. And if Noah's here, you know he's going to end up being one of the best 6. So you just want him gone altogether. Anyhow, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. I'll tell you what. I'm going to watch Hard Knocks, NFC East Hard Knocks, right now. And if the spirit hits me, I don't know if you guys are still going to be up, but if the spirit hits me, I'm feeling good, and there's enough time, I want to come back. And it might just be 50 of us. It might just be 75 of us, whatever. But I think I'm going to come back and break down episode 3 since I didn't get to do it with the Commanders Kings this week on that channel. I'll do it here. So I'm going to go watch it. And if the spirit moves me to do it, I'll come back. If it's not a great episode, I'll just wait. But if I enjoy the episode, I'm going to come back and chop it up with y'all. How's that sound? Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Tomorrow, we'll have Candy Waller. Let me say we should have Candy for Seawall Wednesdays next on tomorrow. So we'll see if that's going to transpire or not. The Commanders Kings will be live on Thursday during Thursday Night Football. It's actually a good game, Seattle hosting the Rams. But we will be live during that, talking all things Commanders and probably a little Thursday Night Football while we're at it. But we look forward to chopping it up with y'all then. But Gerald says Noah is Dan Quinn's guy. We thought the same thing about OZ. I know I did. I was guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your night, and I will be back potentially later on tonight. If not, you'll definitely see me tomorrow. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Peace.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.